Okay. All right. Thank you guys for participating in this presentation. My name is Stephen Fogg. I am Principal and Chief Marketing Officer of Fogg Media, and we're going to share with you a presentation that we recently just gave at the Chip Rooms conference up in Asheville a few weeks ago. Why analytics are your secret weapon for digital storytelling. We're basically going to open up the hood underneath what we do here at Fogg Media and kind of share with you our secret sauce, and hopefully you can apply it to your practice tomorrow. So before we get going, I want to give you a few housekeeping items. Please mute your microphone. We've had a few of these where we've heard people talking about billing or patient information in the background, and obviously we want to keep that down as much as possible and to help with interference of other people. If you have a question during the presentation, feel free to use the chat feature to submit questions. I will answer everything timely at the very end of the presentation, and also leave you all for information or time to ask questions at the end. And finally, think about what you're hoping to learn today. Obviously this is about analytics and how to use them appropriately to enhance your storytelling. But if there's a question along these lines that we don't happen to get to, make a note of it and help, and feel free to share it at the very end. And so we will get to it then. So, okay, great. Some housekeeping items we are wrapped up with. Let's first and foremost, before we dive into it, let's talk about, I'm going to share a few minutes to share with you who am I? Who is this person presenting in front of you? Well, my name is Stephen Fogg. I'm the Principal and Chief Marketing Officer of Fogg Media. Most importantly, I'm the father of two beautiful girls, a 10-year-old and a 6-year-old girl. My 6-year-old just went in kindergarten, and I can't believe that our life is maturing with our girls. Husband. We've been married for almost 8 years. I've been together for almost 13. And I'm a media marketing guy. Before launching Fogg Media, I was working for and in some largest multinational brands in the world. Most recently with 21st Century Fox, I was handling a lot of their digital assets in the Carolinas region. So, like I say, if you watched any programming on anything other than TV during that span I was there, there's a good chance that we had our hands on it either with ad insertion or whatnot. So that's a little bit of who I am. Let's talk about why me. Why am I? How did I get here? How am I in front of you today? It all stems back to this experience. On May 20th, 2009, I was diagnosed with testicular cancer. And over the next 13, 14 months, I was in level 1 trauma at Carolinas Medical Center, which is now Atrium Health. I had multiple procedures done at Presbyterian Hospital, which is now part of Novant Health. And I had 2.5 rounds of chemotherapy done at an independent oncology center here in Charlotte. 2.5 rounds because my body was rejecting one of the drugs so adversely, called bleomycin, that it put me into a device that I kindly refer to as the Pope Mobile for about 36 hours, where basically just had to suck on this hose for about 36 hours and putting steroids or whatever they would back to just basically wake up my lung capacity. I was down to about 20% lung capacity during the whole process. And, I share this whole process with you because, granted, this was a long time ago, but as I was going through the whole procedures, everything, and being in and out of hospitals and waiting rooms and pharmacies and insurance, whatever it was, and Pope Mobiles, I never lost my marketer's hat, and that wasn't intentional going into it. I was able to see going in what really mattered to me as a patient going into the facility. Brand recognition played a lot into that whole aspect of, why I was comfortable going to Carolinas Medical Center or why I was comfortable going to Presbyterian Hospital. But truthfully, when I got in, that was there and that was great, but it was the people, to an aspect of facilities. But it was the people, it was the individuals, it was the processes, it was how comfortable I felt in that space, what really mattered most to me. And I took note of that as a marketer and saw which interactions lasted, which were most profound with me. And I'll tell you, through the whole experience, there's nothing wrong. I had a fantastic experience in all 3 places, but I resonated most with that independent oncology center that took care of me on that 1-to-1 ratio. And I knew then that I really wanted to kind of help facilities like that, get their story out. Why couldn't they get a story out in the same line as, those large hospital systems? And so it's kind of where my processes took shape, was to help them with branding. I knew from that point forward it was helping. Now, I'll tell you, I stumbled along the way with helping. At first and foremost, I thought I was going to start a nonprofit, which I did. The nonprofit was helping deliver art supplies and music and whatnot to the oncology center that I was at. Little did I know how young, dumb, and immature I was at the time, and how much work it did take into keeping a nonprofit afloat that quickly failed. From there, I decided to try to join every nonprofit organization I possibly could. NPAF, PAF, Livestrong, Komen, American Heart Association, American Lung Association, you name it, I've stepped foot in it to some extent. Truthfully, hopefully waiting for that aha moment that would come on and make me realize that, oh my goodness, this is it. This is what you need to do. But truthfully, that moment never happened. And unfortunately, I had to get back into the real world. And so, bills were coming up with all procedures. And I went back into media, and that's where I started with my career, which ended up being 21st Century Fox. And I'll tell you, that was a great opportunity for me to learn a lot about managing others and processes and helping deliver a larger entity when it comes to marketing. But I'll tell you, the aha moment that happened to me was, as well as at 21st Century Fox, we were down in Atlanta, and we were talking to Southeast Toyota car dealerships about advertising the Super Bowl. Now, if you know anything about this world that I'm talking about, the advertising world, particularly TV advertising, Super Bowl is the largest entity in the marketer's world. You want to be a part of this. There's not really a bigger place where you can put your name on. We're in there pitching, and everything went great. Closed the deal. Everybody's super excited, besides me. I felt numb. And I remember I had to drive home by myself that afternoon because I was down there for other meetings or whatnot, and the whole entire trip home I was just continued to be numb. I just knew at that point, that time, that there was something else for me out there. And so I decided to hire a business coach and find out what is the next avenue. Was it a lateral move in corporate America, or was it looking to be a part of a franchise of sorts? And I quickly learned both those things were not it. The franchise got to the point where I almost signed up to be a franchisee of a business called College Hunks Hauling Junk. Well, I know there's nothing wrong with College Hunks Hauling Junk. If you ever knew anything about me, you'd recognize that is not my calling. But I tell you, what did stick with me is we said, well, what about starting your own business? So I'm a business coach about this, and we decided to understand, okay, wait a minute, why don't you take all this knowledge you have in the marketing and media world and combine it with your passion for helping the healthcare industry and start something new. And that's where Fog Media came from. Fog Media was birthed from that conversation. I like to say it, to tell everybody, Fog Media is my why. I took this why me moment of being diagnosed with cancer, fighting for my life for 13 months and trying to figure out what it was in the world that I was trying to do with all this information. It ended up being right in front of me the entire time. And Fog Media is my why. I like to share that with you because I think it helps understand a little bit about what we do here. It helps share our story and helps you with understanding. So I really appreciate you for let us take some time to share our story. But I think we're all here to more about understanding, what is your story? What is your story? Do you have a prolific story, something memorable like what I just shared with you? Maybe you do, maybe you don't. That's okay. We'll help you share your story to a larger audience, and we'll show you the pipeline that we do to go through this. Maybe it's a provider within your group that loves cycling or yoga or mountain climbing or skydiving, whatever it is. These are all pieces of the puzzle that could be part of your story. So once you start mapping out what your story might be for your organization or whatnot, we got to think behind that. What do you want to do with your story? What are the goals behind it? Are your goals to bring more brand awareness to your practice, to maybe a particular provider who might just be coming online or coming to your market? Is it bringing in more patients? Is it building a better relationship with your partners, your referral partners, your channel partners? What is that goal? We're all going to have separate and different goals along the lines with it. And understanding what your goal is with the story that you're using is the next step in this whole phase. So we talked, thinking about your story. What is the story of your group, your practice, your provider? What might not be? What is the goal you want to get out with that story? That's great. You have these two pieces in place, but what do you want to do with this? Well, the important part of it is to understand your analytics. Why is it important to understand analytics? Well, because it helps you reach a larger audience. This is an example of something that we've done at Fog Media to use data analytics to help increase our reach within the audience. There's no paid media involved with this. We've increased from 1,000 to almost 10,000 users within an 18-month span. And we did this by using analytics. And we'll go through the process further down the line in this presentation. Now, why is it important to use analytics, particularly in the online space? Well, because 82% of all healthcare related searches start online. Let me share that again with you. And I always reiterate this because 82% of all healthcare related searches start online. Now, I know that number varies based on the source. Some say as low as 80%, some say as high as 85, 90%. We typically like to just say, all right, 82% we'll call it. We know it sits somewhere in that place. But knowing that, we know it's highly important to be in this space and be present to make sure everything is spit shine, because this is where people are starting. And we want to make sure they see you when they're in this space. So we've talked about why it's important. We've talked about your story. We talked about the goals behind the story and using analytics with it. What is the factor that we use for storytelling to increase the message? Well, easy storytelling online is done by in three tiers, basically. It's the combination of data with content and distribution channels. So we're going to go into each one of these things into more detail. And I will just preface this with saying sometimes I get a little dorky with this information, so I might go a little fast. And if that happens to be the case, please let me know. I will happen to go through it again. So let's talk about each one of these things individually with storytelling. What makes good storytelling compelling online? First and foremost, is to understand that data that we talked about with the analytics and showing the skyrocketing approach with that one client. Online, there's two funnels that we particularly go down. There's your quantitative and your qualitative data sets. What are the differences between these two? Well, your quantitative data sets are the ones that help start building those personas. These are the ones that you see in your analytics accounts that show that, women 25-54 living in these 4 zip codes making X amount of money are the ones that are predominantly coming to your website. That's great. We can start building a persona with the quantitative data sets and using that to help start targeting them with our storytelling, with our, hitting them with our goals. We take it a step further, and this is where I've actually noticed many practices kind of stop the break at the quantitative data sets. They don't go dive into the qualitative data. What is qualitative data? This is that Q source stuff. This is that stuff that helps kind of layer in and helps you understand who directly is that a woman 25-54 living in these 4 zip codes making X amount of money. What are they doing outside of your website? This could really be called cookie tracking, or combining data with your analytics, your Google Analytics account with your social media data, with US Census data, kind of help developing a more prime picture of what is going on in the world. So for instance, we're going to use this information for an example moving forward the whole thing. So your quantitative data set helps you understand that your primary demographic that is coming to visit you is women 25-54 living in these 4 zip codes in South Charlotte. Within that, we also see that they are making above $150,000 per year. Great, that's our P1. The qualitative data takes a step further. This is what they're doing outside of it. So we kind of see patterns of percentages. We see a large percentages of these people are going to banking and financial websites. They might also be going to sports websites. Carolina Panthers, there's a soccer team coming to town. The Hornets are pretty big down here. But we try to disingenuate with those things because they're just so broad. It's a banking town. We eliminate that. We start seeing some things below it that are popping up over and over again. Healthy recipes, quick and easy 30-minute meals, home and gardening tips, all start popping up in some small segments, and we start aggregating all those things together and realizing that we have got a pattern here. We now know, between combining our quantitative data set and our qualitative data set, that we are now targeting our story to women 25-54 living in these 4 zip codes in South Charlotte making above $150,000 plus. And however, they are also really into home and gardening, looking for food, 30-minute quick recipes. We might also be able to define by this that they might be stay-at-home moms or homemakers that are in charge of the meals. This is great. Okay, so we know that data. Where should we go to look for this data to help build with your story? Well, I kind of already touched on it a little bit before, and this might be a little bit rudimentary, but I still like to go through it. First and foremost is Google Analytics. All this data is on your GA account. You should be tapped into a free GA account or Google Analytics account on your website already. If not, please reach out to us after this presentation. I will personally get that taken care of for you. Your newsletter marketing. I'll talk about newsletter marketing later on down the road, because I'll tell you, when I first got going with newsletter marketing, I wasn't really sold on it, but man, it provides an impact in the space simply because the people that are using it. But you get a lot of data with this. Your content contact, your MailChimps. You might have newsletter marketing built into your EMR where it taps into your patient list, and that's all great. This provides you data with what they're doing in your newsletter, how many people are opening, what they're clicking on. It kind of helps you refine that content further as you go, because this process does not stop at just one point. Social media services, your software solution. So we use Hootsuite here at Fog Media, but you can tap in your Facebook data, Instagram, LinkedIn, all that stuff, and see who is coming to it. It kind of helps establishing a pattern. All this data that we're talking about here, it should all work together in unison. So you should have similar understandings of how to tie your GA data back to your Hootsuite data and vice versa along those lines. The US Census. We're getting ready to come up on another big census for the market. And I know, we're here in Charlotte, North Carolina, growing population, and we're seeing some emerging trends with, migration patterns and whatnot. But the US Census is fantastic information, predominantly for getting started with like strategic communications plans, demographic profiling along those lines. We use census data pretty deep. We go deep with the census data when it comes to some of our larger clients that observe larger areas than just that one single demographic. So in that example of that is, we represent a hospital system that is north of Charlotte, who predominantly targets 3 counties. And each one of those counties is a different problem. And we use this to dig into those things. So for instance, we saw in one county that they had a high level of teenage pregnancies. In another county, they had issues with access to healthy foods, farm vegetables along those lines. And then in the third county that they target, we saw that this community was quickly turning from rural to an urban community, and population was exploding, and there was a need for more hospital assistance in this area. So what do we do with the information? Well, area number 1, we would send in teenage pregnancy resources, such as like a mobile unit, education in the classroom, along those lines. Community number 2, we sponsored several farmers markets in the summertime, and one large one in the wintertime, to kind of get our name out associated with, healthy eating, healthy lifestyles. And number 3, in that community that needed more service, we actually launched a whole new ambulatory center, which is basically a level below a full-scale hospital within that community. And this is all from basically tracking all this information between your analytics and your US Census data at that point. Taking it a step further, segmenting and targeting. This is jumping into Claritas, which is my best segments in Prism Premier. These are free tools that you can kind of go into a subzip and kind of define your personas even deeper. So we have that first P1 women 25-54 living in these 4 zip codes. Where you can take that zip code even further and see there's another pattern to maybe develop a persona number 2, and kind of reaffirm or kind of help associate with other patterns on those lines. There are paid versions of this as well, but we've seen to be able to use my best segments in Prism Premier, and that works out just fine for us. Last but not least, your media partners. If you're in a major media market, media partners subscribe to Arbitron, Nielsen, whatever the heck they call it these days, Sorensen. They have treasure troves of data that they would love to give to you. That is their job. That is the rep's job, is to give you this information. However, they're going to try to skew it into their favor to make you look best, and you might have to dive through it. But you can look in here and see what areas index higher than other areas, and take that demographic research even further. So once you have your content, or excuse me, once you have your data in place, you've understood that your persona that you're trying to target with your story is women 25-54 living in these 4 zip codes in South Charlotte, making over $150,000 a year, and they are looking for simple and healthy meals, home and gardening tips along those legs. What do? Well, you serve them. And that's what we do here at Fog too. We love to serve. And so you serve them with content. And this is an example of one of our practices of how we do that. And we do it in a layered cake approach. We do it in a 3-pronged tier system called, we use generalized content, curious-minded content, and expert-related content. Each one of these has a reason to be in here, and we'll go through each one. Generalized content is just that. It's generalized. It's to get the most eyeballs to you at any given time. Now, this is a recipe, and I'm sorry it's a little blurry on my side. I hope it's not on yours, but This is a fresh and easy mango salsa. Now, with this group, we send out a newsletter every Friday and the very first thing we put on it is a healthy recipe. And it's something simple. It's helping engage them. And why it's generalized, because we understood that is our demographics, which we understood before, that women 25, 34 looking for fresh and healthy meals. So we serve them with that. This is a 15-minute salsa recipe with 6 ingredients and two directions with how to do it. Below that, we've got some call to actions, which are download the printable recipe, becoming a Thriver, which is their membership platform that they use. And then if people come back to this later, there's also a third one that also boosts them to this curious minded content. So the curious minded content is something we do to kind of add another layer onto this cake. So the generalized content is that bottom layer of the cake, right? It's the biggest. It's trying to get as much eyeballs on it as possible. Curious minded is those people who really enjoyed that general content, but maybe didn't get enough of it, or is curious about the practice and hasn't really signed up yet, or man, that's a really good mango salsa, but I don't know how to cut up mango. So what do? That on our newsletter on Fridays, we send out that recipe every Friday. On Monday, we typically like to follow up an aspect of that newsletter, in this case, the mango salsa, with something that one of our providers talks about. This one is Dr. Amy Fletcher, who loves to cook Now, keep that in mind. We talked about what is your story. Her story, other than she's a fantastic triathlon, crazy athlete, she loves to cook in the kitchen. And today on this one, in under 90 seconds, she's teaching people how to prepare a mango. So, we try to get those two things to go hand in hand, the generalized content and curious minded content. We push that curious minded content across our social channels on Monday. And then we also redirect a link back to general contact, which has more information on that mango salsa, how to become a thriver. Remember that goals process we're talking about? That is our goal within this, is we want to sign up more people on the membership levels. And I'll tell you that those pieces of content work hand in hand all together. Now, we take it a step further in that third layer of that cake, and we create expert-related content. In the case of Thrive, this practice that we serve, the providers like to write their own content. This is great. In many instances, they don't, and it's okay to be a ghostwriter in the case. But this expert-related content, acne face map, what are your breakouts telling you? Well, this is a whole piece about skincare and all the great things about it. Also promotes a skincare line within the practice. However, this is written by Dr. Fletcher. It's kind of validating her as an expert in this field. We're also tying it back to the generalized and curious minded content, because we're talking about vitamins and minerals that are in mangoes that help with skincare, that help with your breakouts and whatnot. We also have a different call to action on here too. Excuse me, we did at the time, and we've had to remove it because it was so infectious. At the very end of this article, we had scheduled a 15-minute meet and greet with Dr. Amy Fletcher. I'll tell you, this piece of content is still one of the best performing pieces of content out there, because we have it tied to the other pieces of content, and it works hand in hand. So once you have your content in place, where you kind of build your layered cake, where it goes from generalized, we're getting it maybe, and we're being educational, we're being impact, we're providing a resource. Then we introduce the providers to help share their story about who they are, what makes their practice differentiate, and then we validate their expertise with even high-level content. What's next? Well, this is all great, but you need to get it out in a certain aspect. You need to get this out in the right channels. So that's what enacting content distribution channels are all about. Now, in the digital space, there's 3. You have your owned, your earned, and paid media channels. And again, it's probably a little rudimentary to discuss, but I still want to go through each one of these individually. So your own content distribution channel is your website, your social media, your email marketing. These are things that have to be cleaned up before you move anywhere into the earned and paid media. Your website should have all your pedigree information on there. It should be, who, what, where, when, and why. It needs to be mobile responsive, because most of the searches are going on, on the tablets or on phones. Social media, it's sharing more information about your practice, and kind of building that persona of who you guys are. Email marketing, as I mentioned earlier, when we got going in this and we launched this organization, I was not very keen on email marketing. Why? Because in my experience, I received nothing but sales. the grocery store was trying to sell me on some steaks, or a realtor was trying to get me to buy a house, or a car dealership was trying to get me to buy a car, or somebody trying to get me to buy this or that or that, and it just really became off-putting. But what I learned when doing email marketing in this space is we are not, the healthcare organizations are not out there to sell themselves. We're out there to provide a resource. We all realize that these docs or these providers, these clinicians, are the top 1% of 1% of people worldwide. And in more instances than none, they're saving people's lives or their ability to do what they love to do best. So people will look up to. It's a highly respected industry. We have a lot of validation behind it, and they want to hear more from us, particularly so with people having less and less time in front of them based on the structure, the social structure of the modern healthcare appointment. So this email marketing is a place to share your validation. And we've seen click-through rates on average with some of our practices well in the 50s and 60s, and keeping the click-through rate above 30% in them. And I think it's by following that same ethos of using your data to understand who you're reaching out to, and provide them with educational, impactful, and resourceful content, as we showed on the previous slide. Once your owned media is in place, then it's to move into the earned media space. Now, I'll tell you, some people advise you to move into paid media first to help boost you up. There's really no right or wrong way to do it. We typically like to focus on earned media first, because if it's the best thing out there, like that skin acne map post that we had in the previous slide, it's equitable. It's always going to be there. It's always going to be a resource for you. Whereas in the paid promotion, it's paid and then you can dust your hands of it. Unless you pay for it again, it's gone. So we like to focus on earned media first. It might be a slower approach, I admit that, but it's the approach that we provide here, that we like to do here at Flog. And that is your SEO, building up reviews, getting media coverage in play if you have somebody, in PR, and your shares and mentions across your social media or your newsletter or content side of those things. Once you have your earned media layer complete, then it's to move into your paid. As your paid social promotions, display ads, advertorials, paid influencers, which I'll say, I advise a lot of healthcare organizations to stay away from paid influencers unless they're in that health and beauty spa area, selling Botox or cash payments or services. So, Botox, lasers, chemical peels, PRP, platelets, stuff like that. That's where I would really keep paid influencers. I've seen a paid influencer campaign go very badly in this space because they're trying to use an influencer to promote services associated with COVID, and it's just not very good. The last two, pay-per-click advertising and grassroots marketing, are things we advise all of our clients to start with. Why pay-per-click advertising? Make sure you're seen on that place, as we shared in one of the initial slides. 82% of all healthcare-related searches start online. That means pay-per-click advertising you can use to make sure you are being seen in that space when it's there. So we typically advise on starting with 3 campaigns: branding, where you protect your own brand, buying up your own, your name, your likeness, NIL, I guess, for lack of better terms. And by doing so, protecting you from your competition from doing that for you. And we've seen it where competitors do buy the name of their competing practice and direct traffic back to them instead. The other ones are seasonality and symptoms, and then also the main 3 or 4 things you do at your office very well. So, if you're looking at primary care providers, it's searching for, flu shots, seasonal physicals, getting rid of your health benefits, kind of navigating that approach, but also targeting on, the other things you do really well within there. Well, last but not least, grassroots. I know we talk digital for everything here. Grassroots marketing, I think a lot of groups do a very good job with it, where they put the name on the back of a T-shirt and go participate in a fun run, and there's nothing wrong with that at all. But we encourage our partners to get a little more invested in the grassroots marketing, either by owning it outright or partnering with somebody who likes to do it. So examples of this are, we've tried, and we will one day get an organization to buy a bunch of yoga mats, hire a yoga instructor to go out to a park one Saturday a month at the very least, give out the yoga mats and have a free yoga class. Same goes with sponsoring cycling or run clubs. And why are these important? Because they take those yoga mats from that and then they put them into their yoga studio where they're going to on a daily basis that might have, that demographic that you're targeting, that women 25, 54 in those 4 zip codes along those lines. Same goes to the cycling. I'm a cyclist, and there's a group of 10 to 20 of us every morning going down some of the busiest roads in Charlotte with our little cycling kits on. Imagine having, the name of your group organization on the back of that, on the back of 10 to 20 cyclists. Now, granted, I'm sure a lot of us, kind of curse at the same time, but there's still that brand association with, that healthcare organization and that healthy thing that's going on at the time. So let's recap for a second. We've talked data, understanding your data, how to find your data, how to build a persona, and how to use those analytics to refine the story. We've talked about content, how to do it, how to build that layered cake approach to help build validity within your organization. And then we share with you the content distribution channels which to put it across. Now, there's one piece of the puzzle that we are still missing on this, and that is the conversions. Remember, we talked about those goals at the beginning. What is your conversion? What are you trying to do with all this stuff? And the same goes with the content distribution. If you're going to have any goals set with this, there's not much else to do about it. So is your goal to get a new visitor, learn more about the provider, sign up for a newsletter, schedule an appointment, whatever it is, make sure that is on everything that you're doing out there. It just only enhances your chances of converting. So last but not least, let's run through that winning formula again, one more for lack of better terms. Number one is find your story. What is your story? You might have a compelling story like my own. You might not, but it's okay. I promise you, you and your organization does have a story that can be told. When you find that story, you need to understand your data and define personas and keep going back to this data. It will evolve through time as you grow. And you will be able to keep refining it and tightening up your message as you dig deeper into your personas and your data along the lines with it. Next, you need to curate your story to resonate with your audience and continue to serve them what they need. I'll tell you, with Thrive, what we've done, we continue to do the recipes every Friday, the motivation every Monday, but then we've also found other needs to serve them, either with like on-site programs, some virtual, like during COVID, we hired a bunch of our yoga instructors to do virtual classes and stuff like that. Again, like our goal with that is to get as many eyeballs on the organization as possible. I think we've done a fantastic job doing that by serving them with what they need in the place that they want it. And that refines the next step, find the best way to be heard. Make sure your own media is taken care of as most, your webinar, your website, email marketing, your social media, everything that you own, make sure that is protected first and then start building out from there. And last but not least, making sure you're always converting that story into whatever it is you might want to be, meaning more about the provider that you're serving, the organization that you're trying to represent, those patients that you're trying to acquire, or maybe those partners that you're trying to put your name out there for. So that is the winning formula behind it. And I should have noted beforehand, this presentation is a little shorter than usual. We typically go about 45 minutes to an hour, but that is it. Before I open up for questions, I want to thank you guys for the opportunity. When it's all said and done, what we want to do here is just serve. We do have partners that we do serve, and we're very appreciative for them. But we want to be servant leaders to the healthcare organization, healthcare world, healthcare space, and we hope these webinars can help you expand your reach within the community. Without that, I open up to questions. I think we've got one. Well, let me dive into it here. I've got one in the chat. Okay, I do see one. Okay, one question in chat, the chat box does say, how do you know you are looking to target new patients and non-existing ones? Well, that's a good question. That's a very good question right there. How do you differentiate targeting new patients from existing patients? Well, I think there is obviously some overlap with that. We do want to continue to serve our existing patients. However, we have to recognize that we need to focus on the next patient, because if we're not focusing on the next patient, then what's going to happen to our practice in the next 3 to 5 years? So I think, continue with that mantra of we are serving those people that are coming to our website, or whatever it is, the data that we came from, focusing on that, I think, is a priority. And then helping branch out through your other organizations, using social media, going grassroots marketing and pay-per-click. Because I think, it's going to evolve over time. I know it's probably a convoluted answer to answer your question, but there is some overlap that goes along with it. And I do think your next patient can be in that same demographic as your current patient, but then you also have to think about, okay, if we're serving 25-54 with this stuff, we have to look at a subcategory of maybe 25-34 demographic information and going from there. And then finding different ways to target them with that. Okay, let's see anything else. I think that's all I had. It is. So, all right, well, I appreciate the time. Again, if there's not any more questions, I want to thank you again for the opportunity, and I hope you have a wonderful holiday season. And we're here to serve. Here's our information. You can reach out to me directly at email address, or come to Fog Media. We'd love for you to subscribe to our website, our newsletter if you can, and hope you have a wonderful day. Thanks. Bye-bye.